All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. I'm back after a sickness-enforced absence. Thanks for carrying the shit without me, Drew. I will say before we get started, and we're going to talk about the French Open, the NBA playoffs, Stars, Oilers, and then a little National League MVP. I will say that I very much enjoy being a father. I enjoy every day of it. The one aspect that I really don't like, and I'm fine with patients being tested with sleep deprivation. I'm kind of okay with that. I just hate being sick like 28% of my life now. And I've got 3 daughters, all 6 and under, which is in a constant state of revolving sickness. But it's very annoying, but it just kind of has to be copped. But anyway, how have you been, mate?
Oh, you're fighting through it, man. Credit to you. You have the heart and the drive of the great Boston Celtics, who came through adversity in the Eastern Conference and get a hard fought game 4. Wait, no, I mean they did get the win, but I think you're showing more intestinal fortitude than the Celtics, who didn't really have to lift much of a finger to get the Eastern Conference title this year. But hopefully you got to enjoy that.
Yeah, I did. Just quickly on the Celtics, and we'll talk about NBA a bit more in a second, but I've been talking to some people today about the Celtics, who their finals price right now is you can get minus 215 on the Boston Celtics to win the NBA title. There's just no way that the series is going to open that price, or that it's going to be that price before game 1 of the finals, when you consider that the Wolves were just 3 games ago minus 185 to beat Dallas in their series. The gap between the Wolves and the Celtics is, and the Wolves were at a rest disadvantage in game 1, coming off the game 7 at altitude against Denver, having 1 day less rest. Like, it's just not going to be minus 215. So yeah, I've been betting that. I feel like I've been betting the Celtics as part of my kind of morning routine for 6 months every day now at this point. But what I wanted to ask you about them before we weave back into Roland Garros is, do you think that there is something about how the Celtics seem to play with their food and just mess around that is just not captured in the way that the market rates this team, and the fact that it seems to rear its head in the worst moments? Or is that captured enough by team rating, and that just kind of all consumed into what Boston produced statistically? Or 2, is it just kind of like noisy, and is it just kind of variance and it's not actually that important?
Well, the market has an enormous amount of respect for this team game to game, and within game live pricing, halftime pricing, all of it is definitely reflects that the Celtics team is a super team on paper. The problem is, I don't know that I speak for everyone that's making markets in the NBA. I'm certainly not a market maker in the NBA, but I definitely feel like my numbers have been high on the Celtics from Jump Street. And that's because it's a regular season composite rating. You're putting the pieces together. It's tough to know how much of a force multiplier Porzingis is. It's tough to kind of sort out, what you're going to get from their rotation players and the quality of play you're going to get in a playoff setting like the Eastern Conference Finals. And for those reasons, I just kind of throw my hands up after losing on Celtics in game 1 and said, these guys are going to mess around. They're going to win, but they're going to do it ugly. Then I'm done losing money on them game by game. That said, the fair price for the Western Conference Finals starts with a 4, in my opinion, for the Celtics. It's -4, fill in the blank. And it depends on, how you feel about the availability of Porzingis, whether he's going to be a meaningful contributor earlier in the series, or whether you think it's going to take him a while before he's giving you kind of, difference-making minutes in the finals, is kind of how you would fill out the rest of those numbers after -4 in terms of series price in favor of the Celtics. So, I'm with you. I think there are a lot of people who have their appetite is kind of full on Celtics. Like, I've bet them all season long. I'm holding some equity now. How much more do I really want? Laying -2 at you name it, it's the right bet. It should be 4 something, but I'm kind of out of patience of continuing to back the truck up for these guys, and particularly game by game, not seeing it realized.
Yeah, I think, look, with this price, with minus 250, I would be absolutely stunned if this is the price before game one. And I'm assuming that Porzingis is going to be good to go. Everything that I've heard is that he is going to be good to go for game one. And look, I'm not really in the business of doing this, but like that is such a price, and there is like so much relative liquidity that if you just wanted to back that for the sake of just, you can just, I think you would be able to just arb out the other side like in a week or whatever if you wanted to do that and back the Mavs. I'm just going to go down with the ship with the mighty Boston Celtics. I think, to your points, I think with the Celtics and the fact that, look, when we talk about them kind of messing around, I mean, it manifests itself in different ways. Like in the Pacers games, it seems like it was just defensive breakdowns where they're just not playing with intensity. And to me, that is kind of understandable because like Halliburton's out. Like they know they're going to win the series. They know they've been on. They haven't had a test since Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals last year against Miami. And I think it's just not how NBA teams operate. That's why like zigzag theory and everything exists. Like these teams just don't go 100% fully locked in every single play. So I think that is reasonable that they would have those kind of breakdowns. And to be fair, no one brings this up because everyone hates the Celtics and everyone likes piling on them. They got to a level defensively in the last few minutes of games 3 and 4, which was like pretty impressive, where they just decided to put the clamps on and Indiana had no chance to score. I think that's what people forget with Boston is that like they had just had the greatest offense of all time statistically this season. What makes them special is their defense and the fact that it's so versatile. And their weakest perimeter defender in the playoffs is arguably Derek White, who was just all defensive second team, I think, which is completely insane. Like, he had a case to be all D first team, and I think he's probably the most exploitable perimeter defender that they have in their starting lineup, which is just ridiculous. And so that's what I think makes them special. But I think where the kind of playing with their food aspect gets really, I guess, emphasized, and the most notable things is that Tatum just doesn't make super smart decisions on offense. And it's not just at the end of games, it's all throughout the game. Like he's just not a super cerebral player. And Jaylen Brown isn't either. To be honest, I don't think Drew Holiday really is either, having watched what he did in these playoff runs with Milwaukee. I think Derek White is. I think Derek White's pretty cerebral. But like even Tatum in game 4 against Indy looks off Jaylen Brown for a wide open 3 on the final possession so he can take a step back 3 with like, it's just not ideal. But I think that's just a kind of feature of the team, the same way that a feature of Dallas is that Derek Jones Jr. isn't a great shooter and he doesn't get guarded. Like it just kind of has to be taken into the equation. And I think that Boston have so much talent now on offense in particular, where it's just easier for Brown and Tatum than it was a year ago when you've got 4 super talented players around you every single time you drive. And if you just beat your man, you're going to have someone open and they're going to be able to do something. I think the fact that the front office and the coaching staff have simplified everything that those guys need to do, it just means that, yeah, even if they aren't the smartest players, like these guys aren't as smart on offense as Luka Doncic is, but, you know, they're passing the ball to Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday instead of Derek Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford. And, like, that's just way more important, the fact that they're vastly more talented.
Yeah, I think that's all very well said. And, I mean, again, some of the problem with pricing these guys is they consistently don't cover these games. This is now a cold run, even though they're winning. This is a cold run for them as far as covering, pretty aggressive pricing. And, Jason Tatum is not shooting well. He shot 30% in the Eastern Conference Finals from 3. And in particular, his lack of ability to kind of help generate offense from outside the arc was, I think, in a large way why they had a difficult time covering spreads. That and the Indiana shooters shot incredibly well in that series and then hardly ever cooled off. But I mean, the big test and as someone who is holding Celtics futures prices and would like to see them win the title, the Mavericks scared the bejesus out of me. Luka is so smart and so cerebral and kind of exactly could potentially exploit all of the weaknesses with the Celtics. So I'm not saying it will happen, but I definitely kind of understand some of the trepidation with continuing to get deeper and deeper into just how big of a price should we be laying with these guys.
Yeah, I had one of my biggest bets was on the Celtics at minus 550 to win the East heading into game 7 of Knicks Pacers, because the price just isn't going to be minus 550 when the series opens. And with 10 seconds to go in game 1, I was like, these blokes have roped me in again, and we're going to have to go down. The series is going to be like, they're going to be up 3-2, and game 6 is going to be coming down to the last seconds. And how is this happening again? But they got lucky there, and they get lucky with Halliburton getting hurt. To be fair, like, people never bring this up with the Celtics path, and I get that it was comically easy. Like, they are missing their second best player. Kristaps Porzingis is out. He's the second best player on the team, I think. Yeah. And it's a testament to how the roster is built and just the crazy level of talent that they have, that they can miss their second best player. Imagine if the Mavs didn't have Kyrie Irving. Like, that's basically that's what the Celtics are going through right now. And they were still able to, they went 12-2 in the Eastern playoffs with a plus 11 net rating.
Yeah.
An offense that would have ranked 3rd in the regular season, and a defense would have been best in the league. I get they're not playing much.
Yeah, it is totally surreal that we are belly aching about a team that lost 2 games on their way to the finals, and a team that is just an absolute super team on paper with no real obvious weaknesses. But yeah, the fact that they could lose Porzingis and that Al Horford is giving you virtually nothing offensively, and you have you're very thin in the front court. Impressive that they're still able to play at this level. And I mean, they deserve our respect, and they could win a finals that doesn't really look especially competitive. And I don't think any of us would be like shocked. Right. But that said, that it's been a rough hang back in Celtics in game by game stuff for sure.
For sure. And we will talk about the finals at length once we have the matchup guaranteed. But I kind of think the Celtics are I think they'll have a much easier time against the Mavs than, one, people expect, and two, I think the Mavs are a better matchup for Boston in terms of it'll be easier for Boston than if they had to play Minnesota, just having watched so much bloody Tatum and Brown going up against Spo's defense over the years, and how much kind of length and activity really kind of disrupts those guys and their handle, that I think that Minnesota's defense would have given Boston more trouble than Dallas's will, just because I think a lot of Dallas's defense is just predicated on being able to station an athletic rim protector by the rim at all times. And I think that Kristaps Porzingis should be able to break that by dragging out Gafford and Lively to the perimeter, as Mark Daigneault finally did in Game 6 of the OKC series. And OKC had an amazing offensive game in Game 6 without shooting that well from 3. So anyway, we'll see, and we'll be able to talk about that at a later point. But before we pivot to the tennis ball, just wanted to throw one thing out there, and won't go into great length on this, just because Mavs Wolves will be done. Game 4 will be done by the time you're hearing this. We're recording late Tuesday afternoon before that game, but just wanted to talk about how I've backed the Wolves at 14-1 to win the series, and I wanted to just mainly talk about how I think there is a gut reaction once a team goes up 3-0 to just declare the series just finished. And it's just it's not finished. Like, there is some degree of probability for every team that they will be able to win 4 straight. But then 2, I think there's too much kind of uniform discussion of what 3-0 means, and the fact that teams are 154-0 being up 3-0. But like, most of the time, a 3-0 deficit happens when there is a massive talent mismatch or there's an injury, and neither of those things are at play in this series, because the market still rates Minnesota as better than Dallas on neutral and has every game of this series, even when you factor in zigzag. I think the main injury in the series is not with Minnesota, it's with Dallas, with Derek Lively, and we don't have clarity on his status. And you need to, with something like this, I think you start with a baseline of, all right, well, if it's 4 coin flips that Minnesota would have to win, then their series price is 15-1. And I think that it's more favorable to them than 4 coin flips, because one, they're like, right now, they're 1 point underdogs in Game 4 without Lively. They have games 5 and 7 at home. I think and also like their rating will get better progressively as they continue to win games in the series, if that is what they do. They have the Lively uncertainty. these games have been close. It could easily be 3-0 the other way. And so I backed the Wolves at 14-1, just because I can't get to that as fair. I have fair more in the 11-1 type of range, but just wanted to get your thoughts on that. And look, this bet could be dead by the time that you're listening to this. And I mean, I still have a lot more Mavs than Wolves, so I hope it is dead. But given that I have a big position on the Mavs, and I think that 14-1 is value. Whenever I have a big position on something and I'm able to back the other side at what is positive value, then I'll go out of my way to do that naturally. But what do you think about that?
I thought that was a good breakdown on process, and I think it's a good bet. I would say that a lot of the people who kind of hold up the 153, just as fact, are ignoring the fact that sample is wildly skewed with a lot of teams that are just fundamentally worse than their opponent, which is why they were 0-3. And this is not the case here. And the fact that 5 and 7 would be home games does really, really change the math in favor of the team that's trailing 0-3. And what we went through this a year ago. And the Celtics almost did it. So I don't think that you had as big a delta between the teams in that instance as you, in this instance as you did last year with the Celtics and Heat, obviously. But you also weren't getting a 14-1 price. I think it was 8-1 ish at that time when they were down 3-0. Yeah, something like that.
Tatum sprained his ankle.
I remember that one well. I think this is another decent opportunity, though, for sure, to come back, particularly if you have a Mavericks price. And hopefully everybody that listened to you and has heard you break down the series from the start is in the same position as you, holding a nice Mavericks position, because that was a pretty fun one to get plus money on, no doubt.
Indeed. Yeah. I think, to your point, I think Boston Miami may never be topped in terms of just the team being down 3-0, being so likely, or at least having such a relatively high chance of coming back, just given the disparate team strengths and the fact that, Boston was like a 57-win team and the Heat were an 8 seed, etc. But the only two other ones that I can think of, and I probably started following the NBA really closely in like 2006, would be the one that really stands out to me is Orlando, Boston in the 2010 Eastern Conference Finals, where Orlando were the highest seed. They come in as the favorite. They go down 3-0. Then they win games 4 and 5. And then I think they're 3-point dogs in game 6 in Boston, where, again, no big injuries in that one, pretty comparable team strengths. And they lost some close games early in the series, if I recall. And then the other one, and it's a little bit different, where this for the deep NBA fans, but remember when New Orleans swept Portland like 6 years ago, like a 3-6 series where Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday just put the clamps on Damian Lillard, and that was the year that Lillard finished like 4th in MVP, and the Blazers were pretty big favorites going in, and then Drew just cooked Dame all series, and Anthony Davis was a monster. That to me felt different because it felt like New Orleans had just completely checkmated Portland, and Portland were kind of drawing dead. This Dallas-Minnesota, that doesn't feel to me at all like, Minnesota are drawing dead in given games. I think that these have been 3 coin flips and they've landed Dallas's way. And I think that, Minnesota project as the better team on neutral going forward whenever Lively's out. So we will see. We'll revisit that one if we still have a live series by the time you're listening to this, but we may not. Anyway, let's pivot now to tennis, and Drew, the biggest stars battle on the clay courts of Roland Garros for a chance to be crowned a Grand Slam champion. Stream the French Open on Peacock today through June 9th. All right, let's start off on the women's side. Iga Swiatek, -175 to win the French Open, as is her God-given right. And she goes up on Wednesday against Naomi Osaka. Iga's -2,500. Moneyline favorite there. Some other of the bigger matches, Ostapenko is -175 against Clara Tauson. And then Ludmila Samsonova is -165 against Anisimova at +130. Any macro thoughts about the women's side so far, and anything you like in those matchups?
I looked long hard at Amanda Anisimova as a dog against Samsonova. I can't get to that price. I think they're a very close match. Similarly, Osorio as a dog against Ons Jabeur in the plus 215 range is pretty intriguing. The Osaka number is not enough to get me involved. 10-1 is big, and Osaka is definitely a tougher test than your average second round opponent, but this being a clay match, I don't think that really there's kind of a clear and obvious avenue for Osaka's skill set to shine enough to trouble Iga here. So I'm fine with the price on that one. And then, just kind of macro in general. So the top half of the draw is playing on Wednesday. The bottom half of the draw is playing on Thursday. And to this point, outside of Maria Sakkari, there's been no chaos. There's been no drama. There's been no kind of macro upsets that impact the future of the draw here. So still wide open on the bottom. I thought you saw some very talented or some very high quality play from Sabalenka today against much lesser Andreeva. And I think just in general, the women's side is shaping up to be very chalky as we go on. Impressive performance from Coco Gauff in round one, impressive from Rybakina in round one. So if your top four are all kind of cruising, and even though they're going to have tough paths with no other real upsets, this looks like we still have a long way till we know anything in better certainty on the women's side of the draw. But yeah, I mean, Iga at minus 2,000 is pretty amazing against a multiple time slam champ and Naomi Osaka.
Yeah, it very much feels like this tournament will come down to not a matchup between Iga Swiatek and Aryna Sabalenka, but a matchup between Iga Swiatek and the demons shackled inside of her, which sometimes break free of the shackles on the biggest stage. But no, that all makes sense. It is jarring to see the name Swiatek next to Osaka and the number minus 2,500 next to Swiatek's name, but who am I to question that?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, we these two could play in a bigger stage at the U.S. Open.
Yep.
And the pricing for that match might be something like minus 250 for Iga, or even lower. And it wouldn't shock us. But on the clay of Philippe Chatrier, you have to give her this kind of respect.
Indeed. All right, let's look at the men's side. Carlos Alcaraz still the favorite at plus 240. Yannick Sinner, despite his health worries with the draw that he was gifted, he has gone past Novak Djokovic and is now the second favorite, plus 375. Djokovic 4-1. Zverev coming off that win over Rafael Nadal is plus 450. And then your man, Casper Ruud, is 10-1 with Tsitsipas. Has anything change your mind on the men's side based on what you've seen so far?
Well, one of the reasons Djokovic is on the slide, Ruud does look like he's going to be a tough quarterfinal out for him. And Djokovic in the semifinals of Geneva, which was his tune-up tournament, was pretty poor. And so the questions swirling about his form are still very much unanswered. It does look like he's going to come through this unscathed against Herbert, who PHH, the French player, and I think the Hughes Herbert, I believe, is the correct pronunciation of his last two names. But I mean, Djokovic looks vulnerable. Alcaraz was dynamite against JJ Wolf, but JJ Wolf was pretty useless in terms of executing anything good. So I don't know that I want to give Alcaraz a ton of credit for that. Sinner got through unscathed in terms of taking any type of physical damage, which is the important thing for him. But that said, all of the other good players on the bottom are still around. So there's going to be some tough contests for these guys as we kind of march through. And Tsitsipas looked sharp. Rublev looked sharp. Now Alcaraz is only going to have to play one of those two guys, but that's going to be a really tough test in the third quarterfinal likely. And there's still a lot of kind of intriguing middle-class players who are marching right along that are going to have something to say about some of these quarters in the end. But excited that Ruud kind of carried over what was really solid form in Geneva on a championship run there into a clean win this morning, and still like his prices in the double-digit range as the outsider.
Okay, that makes sense. I believe his name is Pierre-Hugues Herbert. He looks like a bloke who was bartending at my hostel in Montmartre circa 2011. And yeah, looks like he's going to lose the tennis match to Novak Djokovic. Right now, Djokovic 2 sets to love up on serve in the third. Okay, anything else that you like on the Wednesday slate, Roland Garros on the men's side?
Yeah, so the bottom half of the draw plays Wednesday, the top half of the draw plays Thursday, and there are definitely some matchups that I do not agree with in terms of pricing here. On the Wednesday slate, very, very surprised that Stan Wawrinka is a dog to Kotov. Kotov comes through in a very, very physical, difficult 5-setter, and Stan, I thought, looked pretty darn sharp against Andy Murray, so I would make Wawrinka the small favorite there. The matchup between Marushan and Dimitrov is interesting as well, because Marushan matches up fairly well against Dimitrov, and Dimitrov is not a player that I have especially high rating for on clay, so I'm going to get involved with the dog Marushan in some way there. And then on the Thursday side of things, you have some really interesting head-to-heads with the Monfils Musetti is kind of the headliner there. Really fun and interesting match on what will likely be a very well-supported Monfils French crowd. And then, as you look at the rest of the slate, most of the women's matches on Thursday are probably going to steal the show, led by Azarenka versus Mira Andreeva, the better of the Andreevas, in what is a pretty coin flippy match where you're clashing the two generations of very talented Russian and Belarusian players.
Okay, there you go. All right, before we pivot into a little baseball, just going to talk a little hockey first, and the Dallas Stars against your Edmonton Oilers. A dramatic Game 3 in Edmonton where first period, it looked like Edmonton weren't just going to roll Dallas, but we were going to roll their way to walking the Stanley Cup with the level that they were playing at. I think it was 10 shots on goal to 1 at one point in the first period. Edmonton were up 2-0. They were like minus 700 on the live money line, thereabouts. And then Dallas just came out in the second period and just absolutely trucked them. It's the most impressive period that I've seen from anyone in these playoffs, just given the caliber of competition. I mean, Florida were insane against the Rangers in the third period in their Game 3 and played some pretty sick periods against the Bruins. But given what had happened in period 1 and the talent on this Oilers team and the fact that it was on the road, that Dallas were able to, I mean, at one point, I think they had it was like 14 shots on goal to none in the second period or thereabouts. They ultimately come away with a 5-3 win, aided by some very questionable goaltending from Stuart Skinner on Jason Robertson's go-ahead score in the third. And now the Stars are minus 300 to win the series. The Oilers are plus 240. The Stars are back to being Stanley Cup favorites at plus 160. The Oilers out to plus 450. What's your read on this series now?
Yeah, I think everything you said checks out to me. The fact that you can have a momentum swing like that in a game is still mind blowing to me. And I don't have a good feel for when the tide is turning in a hockey series or a hockey game at all. It's just sort of like watching, and you're like, wait, why is this happening now? And I have very little read on why. But the obvious and apparent is that Dallas is the best team of the 4 left, I think. And you're getting good, not great goaltending out of Oettinger at this point. If he comes up against a lighter offense, which I think you will have against the Eastern Conference, I'm feeling pretty good about Ottinger's potential to take home the Conn Smythe at this point. I think ultimately this Dallas Stars squad is for real. And you saw this coming before the playoffs even got here, and felt like the Oilers had I don't know, that was just a golden opportunity to really set themselves ahead cleanly with the way that they started that Game 3, and then to see it all come apart like that, I think was pretty problematic for them, particularly the fact that their goaltender is playing with no confidence. So I'm feeling like this is fair price for the series, but and I would actually be surprised if the Stars can't find a way to get it done in 5.
Yeah, it felt like I mean, you never want to say in hockey that a team has solved another team, because it sure looked like Edmonton had solved Dallas in period one, and then it just completely flipped the other way. But just the level that Dallas played at and the way they were able to contain Edmonton was very impressive. I think the most important thing that has happened is that Roope Hintz, who is one of Dallas's 2-3 best players, like he was out for 4 games with an undisclosed upper body injury, which, like, for people who complain about the NFL's injury reports and Bijan Robinson had a migraine and no one declared it, like, hockey is an absolute joke. Like, Matthew Tkachuk has a broken sternum, gets described as lower body injury. Guy can get shot in the shoulder and it's like upper body injury. It's like, well, what's wrong with Roope Hintz? Is he just done? Because he was day to day for like weeks, it seemed like. And he was back yesterday and back for game 3. And he looked like he was, he looked like Roope Hintz, which is pretty key. And I think the thing there is that I think, like, the speculation was it's like a hand or a wrist injury, which in terms of hockey injuries is at this stage is probably on the better end, just because he was able to skate while he was injured. And so he was able to keep up his endurance. I think he only played 13 minutes in game 3, so they were building him back up, but he looked fantastic. I think the key thing there is that in terms of expected goal percentage, while he was on the ice, I believe he was at like 78% of expected goals, which is massive. And everything looked better around him. He just gives them an element of speed and magic, frankly, that they kind of were lacking without him, where they were a little bit too workmanlike and they're just grinding out these goals. He kind of gives them that extra dimension. Jason Robinson looked a lot better with Hintz back as well. So I think the Stars, I think they are the best team left, particularly with Hintz back. I think that they warrant their favoritism for the Cup. I'd say if you're looking to back Dallas, Ottinger, I think, is still a massive. I think he is, double at least anyone else's Conn Smythe equity on the Stars. I'd have him around 50% of Dallas's equity. Like, he does have shaky moments, Jake, but overall the stats are still sparkling. They're both the counting stats, where his goals against average is barely above 2 and his save percentage is above 92%. His goals saved above expected is about 9 goals saved above expected, which is, basically the same as Igor Shesterkin. So, and he looks the part as well, which I think is important with this stuff. Like, if Stuart Skinner was putting up the same stats as Ottinger, I don't think people would really kind of give him the credit. But because Ottinger is kind of a made man, where he's done this in the playoffs before, he is a big name, he makes acrobatic superstar saves, I think that he will get the credit. Where I would say the way to bet into this market now is that the market has decided that Wyatt Johnston and Miro Heiskanen, who is a candidate to have the best name in professional sports, the market has decided that those guys are vastly more likely to win the Conn Smythe than any other Dallas skater. I don't think that's true, because Jason Robertson now, after his hat trick in game 3, he leads Dallas for points throughout the playoffs, cleaned up his stats a lot with that hat trick. And he was, I think he is regarded as the best skater on the Stars. And Heiskanen might have an argument for that too, but he's certainly the best forward. He has been their leading point scorer throughout the past 2 regular seasons. And like, best skater, leading scorer past 2 regular seasons, is leading Dallas in points now. Like, I don't think he can be like double Wyatt Johnston's price, which is what he is some spots. So Jason Robinson at 25-1, that would be my bet on Dallas at the moment. And I think ultimately they will progress. I'm not going out on a limb there. They're minus 300, but I think getting Hintz back and the way that they played in game 3 certainly put them in the box seat.
Yep. Enjoying the potential for Dallas to have the World Series, an NHL, an NBA finalist, and the Cowboys. Right now, which is quite the juxtaposition. And also Miro Heiskanen from Espoo, Finland. Just learned that as I'm looking him up, and that's a lot of very strong Finnish skaters for these the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, he's a monster. He plays 28 28 minutes a game or something ridiculous. He's an incredible player. Need him to calm down a little bit with the scoring, given I don't have any Miro to win the Conn Smythe. But no, he is excellent. But still think Ottinger will likely get it. But I think Miro, Wyatt Johnston, and Jason Robinson are all fairly clustered at the moment, and the market doesn't reflect that. All right, before we get to National League MVP, can Nelly Korda continue her historic run on the LPGA Tour? Find out this week when she competes against the world's best at the US Women's Open, presented by Ali. Tune in Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. All right, National League MVP before we get out of here. Big news there is obviously the unfortunate season-ending injury to Ronald Acuna Jr., ACL tear to the other knee, where he did his ACL back in 2021. He's having a pretty rough season, regardless, so for the purposes of this market. I don't think he was ultimately going to factor in, even if some of the underlying stuff suggested that he had turned the corner. This market has been anchored by two LA Dodgers pretty much since the season started, or the first couple of weeks of the season. That's Mookie Betts, who is plus 135, and Shohei Ohtani, who is 4-1. Then after that, you have Brewers catcher William Contreras at 8-1. My man Bryce Harper at 10-1. Alec Boehm, which is very strange to see his name this high up the odds board. He's 18-1, and then Tatis, Ozuna, Ellie De La Cruz. Any thoughts on this market, Drew?
Yeah. So the most recent straw poll, hat tip Betts 23 first place votes to Ohtani's 18. That's about a week old. Ohtani is outperforming Betts from what I can tell you from a hitting standpoint, but is obviously not playing defense, which is maybe why there's a slight advantage for Betts. But the fact that it's kind of close at this point with the straw poll, and that Ohtani is almost certainly going to be at the top of, he's going to beat Betts from an average standpoint and a home run standpoint this year, makes me think that they should be closer to price than plus 135 and plus 400. So I think the chances that Ohtani flips Betts are real. The chances that Betts miss time for injury is higher likelihood than Ohtani. And I think just in general, going well outside of the expectation that the Dodgers are going to win this somehow is probably asking a lot. Although I will say, if I had a personal choice right now, I'm giving Contreras sincere consideration, considering what he's doing as a catcher and how important that role has been for the Brewers to this point in the season. So he warrants real consideration for me, but I think it's ultimately going to go to Ohtani or Betts, and at price, I would take Ohtani.
Yeah, Mookie is a strange one where I think he warrants favoritism, where he's just banked such a hot start, where if he just kind of plays to his kind of average outcome from here, he's going to be like, 8 WAR on the likely best team in the National League. Like, that is a pretty good just baseline case to win National League MVP, particularly when, he finished second last year. He's obviously got the pedigree, one of baseball's great players of all time. He has a lot of narrative. The fact that he just randomly plays shortstop now, which is still completely ridiculous, that gone from being a right fielder to like, last year, I'll just play second base. I don't know. You went in as shortstop? I can do that. And he's just been able to be, very competent as a Major League Baseball shortstop, which is insane. The one thing with Betts, and the reason why I don't think this is close to done, is that pitchers started making an adjustment with Mookie about 6 weeks ago or so, where they just decided, like, we're never giving you anything in the strike zone. And he hasn't totally adjusted to that yet, where he's been not in a slump because he's still been, a perfectly above average hitter the past 6 weeks or so. But after that insane first 10 days, really, for Betts, he hasn't been that amazing. The power is just like completely dried up. He has like 2 home runs in the past 6 weeks or so. And I suspect that, like, he is such an incredible hitter. He has such amazing plate discipline that I suspect he will just figure it out. And he will, hit his baseline expectation. He'll be an 8 WAR player, and ultimately he will win this award. But introduces a bit more variance, the fact that there has been this significant change with how pitchers are attacking Betts. The thing with Mookie is, like, he, and someone who bet heavily on Betts last year to win MVP and was watching like every one of his plate appearances, like, he is just waiting for a mistake that is like inside middle, so that he can pull the ball with loft to left field.
And that is where like all of his home runs go. And pitchers have decided like, all right, we're just not, if we miss, we're going to miss outside. And so it'll be interesting to see if you can make that adjustment. I suspect if it's close between Betts and Ohtani, what ultimately will happen, and this wasn't really reflected in the straw poll, but I think straw polls at this point, like they are indicative to a point, but also like, there's not a great deal of thought that I think is being put into these votes, where it's more just like, oh, we're doing a straw poll in May. It's like, what's the first name that comes to mind? And I'll go with that, maybe a cursory look at stats or whatever. I think ultimately when it comes down to it, if Betts and Ohtani are close, I think the fact that Betts is playing shortstop and Ohtani is DHing, there is a reason a DH has never won MVP. But Ohtani could take it out of voters' hands by just having such obscene offensive stats. But yeah, I think that Betts warrants favoritism at the moment. I agree with you. Outside of those two, William Contreras, I think, is like the clear tier 2 guy by himself. All the underlying stats with Contreras back up what he's doing. His exit velocity is an all-time high. Jeff Passan wrote an article, I think, about how Contreras, just in terms of like him hitting the sweet spot and his bat speed and all of the kind of stat-casty metrics support what he is doing. This is a legit breakout. He'll have a lot of narrative because the Brewers are favorite to win their division, despite offloading key guys like Corbin Burns. So I don't think at 8-1 I think that's super appetizing, but he's the guy to watch. And then the other long shot I'd be keeping my eye on is just Tatis, because Tatis has flashed so much MVP upside. He's underperforming his expected stats at the moment. He will turn the corner. It's just he's at a bit of a deficit to Betts at the moment. So I don't think there's a ton of meat on the bone at 20-1, but he would be the long shot who I'm just kind of monitoring night to night. Okay. Do you think Ohtani has to win the home run crown in Major League Baseball or the National Leagues to pass Betts as the DH, or are there other secondary things that hurt his case at all?
I think the thing is, and I think it's logical, is even if it may go too far ultimately, is the fact that voters are just going to say it's just way easier for Ohtani to put up these hitting stats compared to Betts when he just doesn't have to worry about playing the field. And all he has to do is focus on hitting 4-5 times a game. And that's his role. Whereas Betts has to play shortstop, which is the most difficult position in the sport. And to be able to put up the offensive numbers he's doing well at shortstop, I think that is going to make it very difficult for Ohtani. In my head, the tipping point at which I would make Ohtani the favorite is, I think if Ohtani has greater than a 1 WAR lead on Betts, I think that is the point at which Ohtani tips into favorite. Because at that point, because Ohtani obviously is providing 0 defensive value in terms of WAR, while Betts is, if Ohtani is being able to overcome that with offensive stats that are so insane that he's 1 WAR clear of Betts, and he may have to put up like a 200 WRC plus to do that, though he's basically doing that at the moment. And Ohtani, by the way, is actually underperforming his expected stats right now, which is like the best thing of all. It's like with Aaron Judge. When Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs, he was underperforming his stats the year he did that, which just goes to show that I think Ohtani and Judge are just kind of in their own tier as hitters, which is so insane given Ohtani may also be the best pitcher in baseball, but not saying anything crazy by saying how ridiculous that he is. But yeah, that is how I would kind of map that out, where if Ohtani is 1 WAR or more clear of Betts, I think at that point he becomes your favorite to win MVP.
Okay.
All right.
I dig it.
Cool. We are done for now. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you soon.